It's funny that basically my entire career has been fueled by a resin made of crushed beans from Africa and South America. Welcome to Hacking Business Technology, the podcast that promises great things like a delightfully uplifting episode. I should have put in parentheses afterwards. No promises. Welcome, Mr. Hooper, Mr. Kawasaki.
Hello there.
Coffee, isn't it?
What's that, Hooper?
Isn't coffee the world's biggest addiction?
Oh, probably. Yeah. I mean, well, no, I would probably put sugar or salt first, maybe.
Sugar is definitely the biggest addiction.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty. Actually, I was watching a video about it last October, and they said, basically, sugar doesn't act that much different than cocaine. If you look at how it actually impacts your brain and it gets you addicted to it, whatever. It's all lobbyists that tell us what sort of materials we can put inside our bodies and which ones we can't for some reason. I don't pretend to understand that, and I'm really open-minded. So if people think that stuff is bad, don't do it. That's my advice to you. So I shared in the show notes. We'll just go over the news real quick because a lot of people just tune in for the news and to see your beautiful faces.
Of course.
But a link down below that someone came up with a cracker for iPhone 6, iPhone 6 and before that cracks all PIN-only passwords within 111 hours. Mm-hmm. Pretty interesting. It actually goes around the 10-try lockout thing too by restarting it before it can actually do that. Really interesting. And then, if you watch the video on the link, a little alarm goes off when it finally hits it. But, just protect yourself. Know that simple passwords no longer work. That's the lesson learned.
What do you need to do that?
It's a little box, actually. So you crack open the iPhone to automate entry into the screen because you don't want to have to hit your finger. So it cracks open. They plug into both the screen and then they plug into the power outlet. And I think the power outlet is twofold. One, to charge it, and then secondly, I think it actually is how it's sending the restart command.
That's wild.
Crazy.
That's how you brick your phone, right? You want to jailbreak it, you have to put it into the power supply.
Yeah. Yeah, I haven't jailbroken in a while. I should try that again. My contract's up in July. This is funny. Everyone knows when their contract is up. Like, people watch that stuff. And so I'm watching it too, and I'm thinking, I shouldn't sign a contract. I should just buy it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That seems like the ultimate luxury now. You don't want the best phone. You just want to be able to change phones whenever you want to.
Mm-hmm. What is it?
I don't know.
$600 or $700 or something?
Yeah, I've told several of you this. I don't know if I've ever actually said it on the podcast or not, but I insure my electronics because I am dependent. My pay is dependent upon me having a phone and also a computer. And so all of my tech gadgets are covered by insurance. I pay like $5 a month or something through my homeowner's insurance to itemize it, basically.
Huh. I was asked this week if I could work without a phone, and I think definitely not. I mean, if I couldn't use BYOD or a company phone, I couldn't work for that company.
Huh. Like, physically? You wouldn't physically be able to accomplish your objectives?
Yes. Well, I mean, I could, but I would be miserable.
Yeah, you would be miserable. You would have to be tied to a computer. Someone said that to me this week, a friend that's not in the industry, and he came up to me and he said, "Have you seen this thing?" And he's showing me Good Enterprise. I'm sure you guys have seen this. It's basically like a sandbox for all your corporate data and stuff. And it blew his mind. He's like, I don't have to be my computer anymore. Like, he's an executive somewhere, and he basically, it blew his mind. He was like, oh my gosh, other people at other companies haven't had to be by their computers all day long.
Hello.
Well, and we laugh, but big organizations. He works for a huge company. I think 300,000 employees. So, it takes time. I tweeted it today. I said, an organization that is less flexible than all of its employees is just a bottleneck. Yeah. Like, if you take the flexibility of all of your employees into account, your ability for your entire team to change the way that your company operates, and your company's just getting in the way, remove that part of it. You
Yeah, but
can.
you don't have
Interesting ruling in court this week. Someone actually ruled that an IP address does not associate to a person. So a judge ruled specifically that someone sharing something via torrent can't be traced to an IP address. So they just threw out IP addresses as evidence for anything.
Wow, I wonder if that'll stick.
So the letter that we received about all of the copyright infringements, from Verizon, I can just throw that out.
Yes. Did you get that too? I got that, and I'm not even a customer. I think I must have ended up in a database somewhere. Think about that. Think about
What
how
is this
interesting
about?
that is. It's about well, this one specifically is about copyright, and it's specifically about sharing illicit material, video material via torrent, and a very powerful company in the entertainment industry, adult entertainment industry, decided to sue this person who was sharing it via torrent, and all they really had was an IP address of who was torrenting it, really. And the judge was like, I can't even tell that if that was in my jurisdiction.
Yeah. Huh. Okay.
Go away. Really interesting. Mark brought up this tool a few weeks ago, Slack, and I think it's fantastic. A couple other people have brought it up too, but I ran across a blog post from someone in the ServiceNow community with an integration.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So they take incidents and stuff, and it creates, like, you move it to Slack, basically, and work it there, and then it goes back to ServiceNow. So I linked to the blog post about how to do it. The guy, like, details how to build this thing.
And what does Slack do?
Slack is enterprise collaboration platform. Asana,
I'm
Trello.
surprised that ServiceNow isn't trying to buy something like that, actually.
Well,
or perhaps
yes, they probably are trying to buy things like that, but they're probably trying to buy a lot of different things. The question is, should they? I think that's really the good question. Like, I remember ServiceNow 10 years ago, and a lot of times now people will come to me with the same problem that they had with the other platforms of yesteryear. Stuff is just kind of disjointed. They're focusing on these flashy modules and not on the core business, which is this old school knowledge-based system that totally is kind of stinky, but they're in a really tough spot because they're really highly adopted, and I don't know how much they're going to be able to innovate in the ITSM space because already they've gone beyond what most IT shops are capable of doing.
Yeah. True.
And it's tough to improve an out-of-box SaaS product. Like, when you talk about change management or whatever as a process and codifying that, it's really hard to make something that is one size fits all out of box or even has the flexibility to make those changes really quickly. But
This becomes feature warfare, right? What feature does it have? Which ones doesn't? Like I was up playing on the ServiceNow demo and I saw they added the new Google search ahead.
Yeah.
Description field and pulled up the articles and Oreo had built something like that a year ago, or 2 years ago. Now they have it, right? So it's like, the ecosystem builds something and they take it and they put it in. It becomes feature warfare, and
Yeah.
someone else will go create something new like that. There is no innovation in this space, service management space. There is no innovation.
Well, I remember, Chris predicted, I think like 2 years ago, that one of the companies would come out with a non-form-based workflow, and I don't think we're anywhere near that yet.
No.
Huh.
Everybody wants data,
I guess.
but no one wants to invest in the time it takes to actually create the intakes for all that data to come into the tool.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's true. We've done demos on here where we built ITSM platforms using Google Docs and Trello as a back-end database. And, you come down to the same problem in that as you do everywhere else. It's what data do you want to track and why do you want to track it and how much money do you want to spend doing it? Because that last one is actually the doozy. Because you could spend millions and millions of dollars doing service management. You can make you can fulfill the dreams of this podcast. Mark Kawasaki dreams of an application that creates an incident instead of an error message. We can build this system. We have the technology, but should we build it?
Well, if you think about it, right, for incident management, it should never be another tool. It should always be within the applications themselves. And this, I think, is where DevOps is getting some traction, right? Because you're now creating apps that are self-aware, and they understand that they just faulted. They're creating their own incident tickets, and then they're spawning all these kind of what-if-then type conditions to resolve it if possible, and if not, then a developer's call, right?
So how long until professional services organizations and ITSM vendors actually catch up to this trend of DevOps to say, here's the JavaScript API, iframe, CMS plugin, whatever, to embed this in your software titles?
Well, it's a long way away from most organizations. I mean, many organizations don't even think non-functional requirements. Right? If you think of an incident, it's almost always because of a non-functional requirement. Did the field take my social security number, and was it 10 digits or 9 digits, whatever it's supposed to be? Yes, it did. But did it do it fast? Or did it error out when it did it? Or did it secure it in the right way? They never think about that. Even when they're building the application, they don't think about that. So we're a ways away from just the discipline getting there. But there are pockets of the technology, like Chaos Monkey at Netflix, that goes out there and spontaneously tries to break things, and it's through stress that the system becomes stronger, because they're always looking to eliminate those points of constraints, right? So it's the discipline, and the technology will follow the discipline.
Yeah.
It's tough to jump to that maturity when you're building a platform, though.
And again, I think there's another step to take as well, and that's to build into the tool the communication with the customer, like I've talked about before, where if you're trying to enter a social security number and for some reason you have some freaky social security number that has a letter in it, I mean, just some weird example,
Yep.
And the tool doesn't take that, it would be nice if the tool told you, we can't do that, but we know you're trying to do that, and we have this enhancement request already entered, so cool, we'll get back to you. But of course they don't take that step.
Those ones that, like, you didn't check a box, or instead of just giving you this big red message at the top, like you failed to fill out the form, it actually scrolls back to the section you missed and puts a big arrow, like, you need to check this.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you hear about that a lot, and I think that's one of the cruxes of not having good diversity in technology. A good example that I read this week was there's this gym that every time someone registered with the prefix doctor, it automatically assumed it was a man and generated a key code for the male locker room.
Oh.
And the woman was, of course, immediately upset because gender bias, of course.
Building gender bias into the tool.
Yeah, there's an enterprise architect that should be fired for not taking the right requirements. They weren't thinking about non-functional requirements. They weren't thinking about user experience. There was no woman on that project.
That's the weirdest kind of technical debt I've ever heard of. I mean, it's like social technical debt.
And granted, most systems aren't quite that bad. God, let's hope so. It's those homegrown ones. Like it's just not starting up with the ability to have the maturity to look ahead into something like, what are we actually going to do with this? That is why I think it's really important that companies really focus on enterprise architecture. I think having someone that is business savvy in the tech field or tech savvy in the business field, those two people, those are like the prime meridian. If you can get those two people in the same room, oh my gosh, the magic will happen. That one person will, your CEO will get up and they'll say, well, we need to raise revenue by 5%. And the first enterprise architect that raises their hand and says, that is not a smart goal. You said no times. You didn't say how you were going to do it. You didn't say why you were going to do it. The first enterprise architect that says that wins. You win.
Yeah.
And you should give them a raise, like on the spot.
Yeah.
Well, it's it always goes back to the cost of ownership. enterprise architects are not valued for the ability to orchestrate business. They're valued for their ability to orchestrate infrastructure, and that's a huge disconnect.
Yeah, you have to be able to connect those two.
You don't have to be architects. I mean, this week I was in Illinois doing a consulting engagement, and I met with the business units. I had 2 workshops with IT, and I had 8 workshops on the business side. And I immediately started to see, well, the business doesn't really have a handle on what they're trying to do. So of course IT is just going to be reacting to that. They're not even aware of what technology could be doing for them. I brought up the concept of customer experience management. I said, are you managing, as an insurance company, are you managing how your agents are using your systems, and do they have stickiness with your technology? Because if they have stickiness with your technology, they'll have stickiness with your products. If they have stickiness with your product, they're underwriting more policies, and that's revenue. And they were like, well, how do we do that? This was the marketing I was talking to.
Yeah, you got to lead.
Yeah.
Start. Make decisions. Put people in those categories. We see it all the time, actually, internally and externally, where people will say, where should I put this knowledge? Where can I author this knowledge? And really, at the end of the day, all you need is one leader to say, put all the knowledge here.
Yes.
Like, we are going to invest in this spot, and we're going to make sure that your knowledge is protected. We're going to love that knowledge. We're going to nurture that knowledge. If we move that thing, we're going to make sure that all of your things move to this other thing really well. Those leaders are the agents of change. They don't exist. Yeah. So if you have one, don't ever quit.
It's funny you say that, Baron, because the objective was to get off of Service Desk Express, which they've been on. It's now retired and they're out of support. So the number one requirement for this solution going forward for them is knowledge management.
I thought you were going to say that they were going to try to keep all their data. Number one requirement, all of the data needs to be kept forever.
Because it's not what the data is now. It's on the business analyst side for some of the lines of business in 3-ring binders. And spread all over SharePoint like a grenade hit it.
And that's Hacking Business Technology. We'll see you next week. I'm just kidding.
So it's about, I mean, to me it still goes back to community and diversity. You need diversity in QA as well, right? So what we're talking about with enterprise architecture or just different perspectives on what your users are actually trying to accomplish versus what you're trying to deliver. There's a good example.
Failure.
Yeah, but it'd be nice to have QA of design as well, right? So before you've already developed something. But
yeah, how many times have you seen that in a waterfall project? 4 people get into a room and define the requirements. Then 6 people go and code it. Then 20 people get upset because those 4 and 6 people didn't say anything to them.
Yep. Yeah.
All too often.
That Google X guy, the moonshot guy, talking this week about how he just couldn't believe, he was amazed that there was so many security concerns with Google Glass. And his argument was, well, because these people are complaining about someone filming them in public and not realizing that there's 21 cameras on them filming them while they're complaining about someone filming them with Google Glass. But the point is, he's a smart guy, he's a visionary, he knows these things. Your regular average person doesn't care or doesn't know about those things. So again, that's a failure of diversity in QA, where you needed to get the regular guy on the street's view of security, not this Google visionary, right?
Right. Well, that's the Apple dilemma, right? I mean, I think Apple hit it really big with the younger generation and college students and all this kind of stuff. And then as it moved into like family, we said, okay, so if we all have shared music, we all have to have our own iTunes accounts, and we have to duplicate the 3 gig across the 7 people who use this laptop, and now I have 21 gig of replicated data across this thing. Well, that doesn't make any sense. It's like, well, why would you have somebody else use your laptop? It's like, oh, you don't have kids.
Yeah.
You don't have a family. You're just bringing it in out of your dorm. Right?
Yeah. Understand your use cases. And be honest about stuff. And really do celebrate failure. If someone finds an error, celebrate it. don't make it an argument. Don't make it a chastisement of the development team, because it's not their fault. It's probably upstream, actually. It's probably process wasn't mapped, so you didn't know what requirements to write. And so, just grasp onto that stuff and be friendly about it. Be convivial about it. Be conjovial about it.
I wonder if we're getting to the point. It's like I'm at the point now with some of these applications. I have no desire to put another app on my phone. In fact, this week I had some hotel room time that I went there and I sat and I probably deleted 25 applications off my phone because I was just done with them. I don't know. I mean, I think we're hitting a major inflection point where people need to have a point-in-time solution, but then it's going to go. You expect that it's going to maybe succeed for a certain point in time, but then it's going to fail. But just know it's going to fail.
Don't appify a website just because you can.
Yeah.
And there's tons of really good ways to do. All the time we see this all the time in sales and marketing. The sales team says, "Well, I need something to spam out. I need something to put on my LinkedIn profile or whatever." No, you don't need that. What you need to do is you need to go out and listen to 3,000 conversations on LinkedIn and then provide relevant information. Not trying to provide relevant information to see if any fish take a bite.
Right.
I think companies need this exact same thing. Just listen. Just listen to people. I mean, Chris said it a million times on the last podcast, which turned into this podcast.
It's funny, even like Eventbrite, I don't go and watch Eventbrites, except until I've seen a topic kind of come a few times, and then I go back and I see the one that was most viewed. Then I watch.
Yeah.
It's true. Yeah, I don't go to YouTube looking for YouTube stuff, but when they email me the stuff that they know I'm going to love, I'm like,
yes.
There.
Well, you were talking about
listening to me.
You were talking about that this week, Baron. I mean, I think it's related. A no sales approach.
Yeah.
Right? What does that mean? What's a no sales approach?
Well, it's not chasing. So, our sales reps, they are more like business analysts than sales reps. All they do is really just have coffee with people around town. So my guy here in Minnesota, he just goes and has coffee with people and just has conversations a lot. And he'll give advice, and if they like it, then so be it. And if they don't, then so be it. And if we can't fill a gap, we can maybe provide recommendation on a gap filler that would work better than us. And if we can fill it, then let's discuss that. I don't know.
So do you feel that's just a different, unique take, or do you feel like the whole RFP process is changing, or?
I think business leaders need consultative guidance in a world full of noise. And so what we're starting to realize is that you get the consulting for free. All the other stuff is what's wrapped around it. Or you get the tech for free. It's the training, it's the implementation, it's the hand-holding from point A to point B. It's the guarantee that you won't lose.
It's interesting. When we have a big project, we're under very strict guidelines not to talk to any vendors. So I mean, there's like rules preventing us from having that coffee conversation, right?
Yeah.
That seems awfully stifling, but
it's really stifling. So at one of our biggest companies, and I can't say the name, but they're gigantic. They reached a point in a project where they were just like, we can't wrap our heads around everything that's happening. They couldn't they couldn't connect process to requirements to design to anything. And so they already have like 5 or 6 consulting relationships, Kinsey's there, and KPMG's there, and I think ServiceNow professional services are there. There's a ton of people there. Accenture's there. And so what they do is they'll just pull everyone in and say, like, look, something's wrong here. Let's take an objective approach and look at what's wrong here. And so they formulate a plan and they come up with it. And you've got all these vendors and their best people actually working together. And when that happens, oh my gosh, it's unbelievable how powerful and how much they challenge each other. So if you can afford it, you know.
Wow, that's a great idea. I love that. Bring all of them together at once.
Of course, they're hemorrhaging money. You know, you call a meeting like that for 8 hours.
Wow.
Well, they are and they aren't, right? I mean, there's a cost of not doing it. The cost of failure or going about the project in the wrong way could be tens of millions of dollars. So would that meeting cost 20 grand? It's a drop in the bucket compared to what it could have.
It costs a lot of money to respond to an RFP as well. I mean,
yeah. You know, even projects, you know, it's like I was recently working with a client who's got a project portfolio management solution, and they told me they reprioritize their projects on a monthly basis. I said, what's the average length of your projects? They said 6 to 9 months. I said, there's an issue. I said, you know, you've heard the term context switching, right? You know, you're pulling people off of one train of thought. They're ready to break through and solve this issue and kind of come up with something cool and reverse engineer and go back the other way. It's a terrible circumstance when you don't have the right experienced people sitting in a room hashing it out and debating it out. And a lot of organizations, they have great people, very talented. You know, it's the Dennis I can't remember, Dennis Ravenel. We've had him on the previous podcast.
Oh yeah.
Dennis gave an illustration when he spoke at HDI. I'm sorry, ITSMF. He said, you know, you can have these musicians. They're classically trained and skilled, and they got beautiful pieces of instrument in front of them that are superior tools. If you show up early, you know, they're all making noise. They're all playing their songs. It sounds terrible, but the conductor walks in, everybody claps, and then they're all in the same sheet of music, and then they're all in time, right? And now you hear this beautiful music come together. And that's what a lot of organizations are struggling with. People are good people. The culturally, they're good people, but culturally, they're not in sync. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all leadership.
Yeah.
Yeah, when I read the article about Slack, that's basically what they said. They were the company that I think I linked it last week, actually. They said instantly everyone knew everything.
Yeah.
And I think that's sort of what people need to get to.
You mean because of the interactions in the community?
Yeah, like when you and I talk about collaboration, you know, we have this assumption of what good collaboration looks like, whether it's, you know, Chatter with a SharePoint file end or Box.net with a Trello board or whatever, you know, whatever works for your situation. But what I'm saying is that, actually, I don't remember what I was saying.
Well, so that's a good point. So, like, Hooper, you're talking about being in sync, and typically I think of, you know, leadership can make that happen. But on the Slack side, you know, if you have a community-based tool or just a culture that the community itself can be in sync, even without leadership, that's tremendous. But I often think that never happens unless you have the leadership to go with it as well. I don't know.
Yeah, when we say we want transparency, this is what we're talking about. The ability to see these conversations and interact with them and like them and favorite them and reshare them. And
I was thinking, like, you know, we use change management integrated with our CMDBs so that we don't have conflicts of changes. But I was thinking to myself just a couple days ago, I said, why don't we have the ability to, if I'm working on an incident, open that ticket and it sends a little flag to the CI. If someone else also starts working on a ticket associated to that same CI, like if I'm terminal serving into the box or, you know, whatever, trying to do some troubleshooting, it also gives a heads up to that other person. It's like, are you trying to fix something related to this CI as well? Maybe our stuff is related. It's like, why don't we have this more real time? You know, we kind of do this report at the end of the week to look at these incidents that real time. Pretty wild.
Well, I think, you know, sometimes the vendors try to get close by introducing features like subscribing to a CI or something like that. But there's just not a culture or an everyday process around it that makes it work unless you build that as well. It's not just going to happen.
Yeah, it has to be something that allows you to do it out of band. Like, I need a mobile app because I'm on my screen here. I need a mobile app that says, okay, right now I'm touching these 5 things. And I'll send it to the community, right? Just letting them know.
I mean, like, like even tagging, you can tag a ticket or a CI or whatever, but you're the only one that sees those tags. So how is that useful?
Yeah.
It seems like it would make sense to have a real-time RSS feed of records created for a CI on the screen of that CI. That's basically what you're saying.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like an RSS ticker in the bottom right-hand corner down here where your little heads are. And it would say, you know, incident opened for this CI by so-and-so. Here's the short description.
Or sort of like, Evernote does. Like it's got a little radar that says, hey, someone just updated this node or that node, and you can...
Yeah.
But I think it needs to be even more than that, because I'm not always watching those screens. It needs to like tell me, like I want to turn things hot. Like these things I'm working on right now are hot. If everybody else touches them, it's going to burn them. It's like, whoosh, oh, Matt's working on those things. Let me talk to Matt because maybe he's working on the same thing, or I'm trying to change something that he's working on. It's like, that kind of stuff just drives the ops guys crazy. I think it's just so hard, and especially in these more complex microservices environments, it's gonna get worse. Everything's virtualized, everything's microservices.
Yeah.
I suppose it's true until you realize a solution that allows you to multi-remote into a server, or I don't know. There's a lot of different ways you would want to solve that, so it's completely dependent upon the environment. But I really like the use case, and what needs to happen is it needs to just be really easy to implement, because no one is going to see the money and time to get that kind of feature in there. Like it's always, I tweeted this, and I think we've talked about it, so I'm sorry if I'm rambling again about it. But if ops wants to improve something, they need to be able to measure it, but no leader ever says, I'd really like to measure every detail of your work, because that in and of itself is expensive. And so you get in this catch-22 of, well, I'm not going to lead unless you can prove to me that I'm going to make more money, and I'm not going to change until you lead, and it's just terrible. It's caustic, but it's delightfully uplifting, and that's what I promised you in this episode. Thank you, boys, for bringing the heat. We'll see you next week.
Take care, everybody.
Bye, everybody.